The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. When people and freight move between 2 points, it's called transportation.
They move by plane.
They move by rail and over the network of highways on the land.
And they move by steamer and barge on the lakes and rivers that run through and touch Indiana.
The Indiana University Radio and Television Service presents Transportation Indiana.
This is a program dedicated to the men and women of Indiana who keep the lifeline of industry open, to allow us travel through the Hoosier State in all the comfort and convenience modern science can offer. Listen now to the sounds of your transportation, Indiana.
Well, Mr. Soundman, how about the sound of the transportation for today?
Oh, what kind of transportation agency is it?
Today, Transportation Indiana does a show on a short line railroad.
Okay, then, how about a sound of a short locomotive?
Don't be funny. And anyway, that doesn't tell the whole story.
How come?
Because this particular short line railroad, the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon Railroad, is unique. It not only runs a railroad between Corydon, Indiana, and Corydon Junction, it also runs a truck route east from Corydon to Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, that's a major truck hub, isn't it?
Yes, but that's not all. The Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon can give its customers Railway Express or Air Express in addition to all that. You see, because of its size, the whole rail line is only 8 miles long, and the whole railroad has only just eight employees. They can give their customers the kind of service the customer wants.
You mean they aren't restricted to the specialized activity of some of the bigger agencies?
Yeah, and that's the case with most short line railroads. Their big selling point is service to the community.
Well, how long did you say it was?
8 miles.
Well, isn't that too short? I mean, it hardly seems long enough to bother with.
No short line railroad is too short if there's a job to do. And the job that Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon does is plenty worthwhile. You heard me mention 6 factories, and there are about 75 other businesses that must get their products in and out of Corydon to the bigger, more extensive transportation agencies. That's where the short line railroad comes in.
Isn't the rate structure on a short line prohibitive for industries?
Not when you consider the rates on this short line are competitive as far as Louisville.
Yeah, I'm beginning to see now.
Sure, it's a simple thing for businesses all over the world to get their products into Corydon. And it's just as simple for the Corydon businesses to get their products all over the world, if they've got a short line railroad to do it with.
You mean a short line railroad that operates trucks and railway and air express agency, too, don't you?
Right.
I guess that lets me out, then.
What do you mean?
Well, if you want a sound effect to show this kind of transportation, I'm going to have to start the locomotive, rev up the truck engines, and turn over a few airplane propellers. And, brother, that ain't easy.
Tell you what, instead of trying to show all these sounds at once, just warm up your sound effect of the steam locomotive. We'll use it in a minute or two when we tell the story of the LNA&C's passenger service back in 1942.
Passenger service?
Sure. A few years back, they used to carry a lot of folks to and from Corydon. Just like the freight today, those folks back then had to have a way of getting to other railroads and of getting to Corydon for the fare and such things. So they took the railroad. But in 1942, even though the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon looked like a freight train, it was just as much a passenger train as before. Take, for example, this newlywed couple coming along the walk beside the tracks in Corydon.
Fred, for heaven's sake, where's the train? We're doing Corydon Junction this afternoon. We are going to on the Southern, aren't we?
Well, gee, Essie, I think so. Uncle Harold told us we should sneak away early and come down to the station, and that the train would be waiting. All I see here is a stubby engine, 4 boxcars, and a caboose.
Fine honeymoon this is going to be. Well, don't just stand there. Ask someone.
Tell you what, Essie, I'll ask someone. There's a fellow who looks like he works here. Say, mister.
You calling me?
Yes, my girl and I
Your
were...
girl?
I mean my wife and I. We were just married today. Well, we were told that we could catch a train to Corydon Junction here.
That's right.
I mean, well, they said we could catch it now.
Yep.
I mean, well, where?
Right over there, on the tracks over there.
You mean we have to ride in a boxcar? Well, I never.
No, ma'am. Lots of folks ask that question, but that's not where you're right at all.
You don't mean we'll ride in the locomotive? Say, come to think of it, that might be fun.
You won't get me near that engine.
No, ma'am. You'll both ride in the caboose, in the rear half of it. I think you'll enjoy it. Everyone else does. Why don't you follow me and I'll show you through it?
Well, I never. I should have listened to Mother.
Now, in here, this is the express compartment.
Why, there's some baby chicks. Aren't they cute? And look at that beautiful Persian cat.
Yeah, we carry quite a number of things in here. Never know from one day to the next what we'll find. Now, through this door is the passenger compartment.
Say now.
Well, isn't this beautiful? Are we still in the caboose?
Yes, ma'am.
Look at that beautiful red leather seat. Let's see how it feels. Why, Fred, they're just like Uncle Harold's leather armchair. They're comfortable.
Is that a broom and feather duster hanging over there?
It sure is. Well, I never seen such a cute housekeeping arrangement in all my born days.
And look at that, Essie. A stove with a rail around the top. Guess that's to keep the coffee pot from spilling.
Coffee pots? Well, I never. Say, this is going to be a wonderful trip.
Yes, that was the way they carried passengers back in 1942. A reconditioned caboose purchased from the Erie Railroad, made into one of the most unique passenger cars ever seen on American railroads. The caboose isn't used for passengers anymore, but it stands outside the office in Corydon, a monument to a past era in railroading. Right now, let's see who the principal shippers are, the ones who enjoy the services of this short line railroad. Let's take a trip on the train today and read the names off as we pass them along the right-of-way. Breeden's Hatchery,
Bill's Auto Scrap Dealers,
Cliff Limberry Company,
Perkins Sawmill,
Walt Schmidt Asphalt and Heavy Products,
Public Service Company of Indiana,
Eureka Telephone Company,
Stark Brothers Feed Company,
Farm Bureau Co-op,
Standard Oil Company,
Texas Oil Company Bulk Products,
Lanesville Milling Company,
Hearst Step Pro Lumber and Building,
Keller Furniture Manufacturing Company,
Harrison County Rural Electrification,
Kenneth Brown Heavy Implements,
Davis Monroe Implement Dealers, and many more. So you see, there definitely is a need for short line railroads. Now, before we meet some of the folks who work for this short line railroad, let's listen to one of the classic stories told about it. The scene is a meeting between big and small railroad men. One of the big railroad men is speaking against the practice of having to exchange railroad passes with every little road in the business.
And believe me, I'm against all you little fellas attaching yourselves to my railroad. Going anywhere you want without paying a cent. When will I ever use your passes? You, Buchanan. When will I ever take your 8 miles?
Well, Ed, you never can tell.
You bet I can tell. Never. That's when I'll take it. After all, Buchanan, my railroad is over 10,000 miles long. And your railroad, the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon, is only 8 miles.
That's right, Ed. But why don't you give credit where credit is due?
Well, what do you mean?
It may not be as long, but by George, we're just as wide.
Yes, the LNA&C is a colorful road, one filled with the lore and tradition that's made America a land of pioneers. But now, let's turn our eyes and ears to the short line of today. Let's meet some of the people who make it go. Here's your host, Jack Sheehan.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Yes, we made the trip this morning down here to Corydon, Indiana, and it was a beautiful early spring morning, as a matter of fact. And we are now located in the business office of the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon Railroad, a very bright and cheery office it is, too. We're going to find out a little bit about the office operation here, and to help us explain it is Mrs. Golda Shireman, who is the railroad agent. And Mrs. Shireman, short rail line or not, this has a lot of office work, I'm quite sure. And how many people do you have working here in the office?
We have just 3. Mrs. Buchanan, who is wife of the president, myself, and Mr. Buchanan.
Now, only 3 people in an office taking care of all of the complex billing and routing and so forth that must go on. How do the people divide up this work, and what is done in here?
Well, we just do a little bit of everything.
I see.
We have our billing, which is quite unique. We have to do our billing, separate our proportion from the other railroads, and then, after we get the billing done, we separate them and send the original bill on with the cars.
And now, say a typical Corridon industry perhaps would call in here to the office, and you'd pick up the phone, and they'd say they have a carload that they want to be taken out. And then what's the office procedure after that?
Well, after we get their bill, we check the routing to see if it applies. Then we route the car, put our rate on, and after we bill it, well, the billing goes on with the car.
Okie doke. Now, there's also a truck line connected with the Louisville, New Albany, and Corridon Railroad, and I presume that office work is taken care of in here, too. And how is the procedure carried on with regard to the truck line?
Well, much the same way. We get our billing in on the truck bill, and then we separate our charge from the other and make our settlements with the different truck lines, just as we do with the different railroads.
Now, as was mentioned earlier, back at the studio, as a matter of fact, they said that there was also a Railway and Air Express agency here, and you handled that, I imagine. And what's the deal with the expressing?
Well, we have our own express agency here, and then we send our shipments as far as Corridon Junction and give them to the Railway Express agency there. But we do make our settlements the same.
I see. Okay, now, I imagine there are other things that go on in the office here, and I wonder if you could maybe enumerate some of those things.
Well, we have our claim department, and
what goes on in the claim department?
Whenever there's a damage to a shipment, well, the consignee brings in his damage claim, and then we have to send it on to the different railroads or truck lines that were involved in this damage and get prorate charges from them, so that each one of them has a certain percentage of that claim to pay.
All right, a very excellent description of what is carried on here in the business office of the Louisville, New Albany, and Corridon Railroad. And for that fine description, we would like to thank Miss Golda Shireman, who is the railroad agent for Louisville, New Albany, and Corridon. Right now, I can look out the window here and see the tracks of the railroad running by us, and on those tracks are, a diesel locomotive. And in the diesel locomotive is an engineer, and frankly, I want to find out a little bit about that locomotive. It's unique in itself, and so what do you say we go outside there and talk to the engineer? Well, here we are outside, ladies and gentlemen, just as I said, but before we get into the engine and talk to the engineer, we met a person right out here on the platform that you're going to be very happy to meet, just as I was. His name is Mr. William Buchanan. He's the president of the Louisville, New Albany, and Corridon Railroad, and right now you can hear in the background the diesel engine going by. Mr. Buchanan, first of all, sir, I wonder if you can tell me, now there's a consist of 4 cars here, and what's the story on this makeup here?
Well, this first car you see here is a Wabash 3000-099. That's an empty hopper car going back to the Hales and Hunter. This came into Earl Breed's, the hopper car containing feed. The next car is a CNNW 85-356, is a local billing car out of Keller containing their furniture and etc. going into the Louisville House Southern Railway. The next car is a TCX 4136 tank car consigned to the Texas company at Corridon, Indiana, which is being returned empty. The next car is a I believe I mentioned the CNNW. The next car is an NKP 15277 local, also going to the Southern Railroad Company house car containing LCL and approximately 50 way bells to this car containing 10,000 pounds.
Well, sir, now this is a consist of 4 cars. Is that the normal, how do you run the railroad
well,
normally?
That's normally a day. However, most of our Fridays are anywhere from 6 to 8 cars outbound containing around 193 tons. And this might consist of a carload of ties or a carload of etc. In other words, it could be a mixed car.
Okay, now, who founded this railroad, Mr. Buchanan? What's the story on that?
This railroad was founded by 2 Scotchmen over and around New York City that came over here in 1875 and decided to build a long railroad from Louisville, Kentucky, over to St. Louis, known as the Old Airline. Now, in order not to miss the the county seat here, they decided to build a short line railroad from Corydon Junction, which is the junction point of the LNA&C Railroad Company, and the Southern. They decided to build this short line into the county seat. Thus, these two men ventured into a program that was very prevalent in that era. However, the facilities at Corydon Junction are solely owned by the local carrier here to ensure complete cooperation between the large carrier and the small.
Now, sir, your father, I believe, took over along about the first part of the 20th century. When
That
was
is
that?
correct. 1899, he came here and started in as an office boy, and then around 1914 took over in complete charge of the railroad.
A wonderful reflection of the American way of doing things, sir. When did you come on the scene?
Well, I came on the scene on the payroll, that is to speak, in 1941. However, in 1937, he became ill, and I took over as a sort of a sub rosa proposition. Now, it may seem strange, but my main income comes from the Texas Company, of which I'm distributor for 3 counties. This is, of course, the railroad, my love, first and last.
All right, sir. How about the future of this railroad now?
We think the future is very bright, frankly. A lot of railroads, particularly short lines, have been taking up rail lines and spurs. We have been adding, and we think that is a good indication for the years to come. In fact, our business last year was an increase over the year before, despite the fact that the railroads throughout the United States showed a loss.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. We see that this locomotive and the train is just about getting ready to go, so we better get aboard and talk to that engineer about what's going on there. Okay, we finally did make the train. We have our recording equipment set up in the cab of the locomotive, and here we have to tell us a little bit about this operation Mr. David Tyndall, who's the engineer, and also Mr. Carlisle Adams, who is the conductor on board this one. Mr. Tyndall, what kind of a locomotive is it you're driving here?
Cummins diesel.
And the diesel drives what, electric motors?
Yeah, made by General Electric.
Okay, sir. Now, what speed are we traveling at?
Oh, about 15 miles right now.
And what's the speed limit on this road?
20 miles.
How long does it take it to get between Corydon and Corydon Junction?
Well, usually about 40 minutes, but we have been 2 days.
2 days? There must be quite a story behind that. What happened, Mr. Tyndall?
Well, we had a rail to turn over, and we throwed 2 cars off. Then we got them back on, started in again, we throwed another one, and
then what day did you start?
Well, we started a Thursday, and we got back a Sunday.
I see. Well, sir, that's with those things are few and far between, thank goodness. How long have you been an engineer here, sir?
4 years.
And we'd like to talk now to Carlisle Adams, the conductor. How long have you been on the road?
4 years.
And have you always been a conductor, sir?
No, I've been a truck driver most of my life.
Oh, yeah, then that means you must be driving, do you help drive the truck?
Yeah, I help to operate the transfer line to driving trucks.
I see. Okay, and it just goes to show you the versatility as guys got to have to get on a short line railroad, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, we'd like to thank both Mr. Tyndall and Mr. Adams for taking time out. We must be approaching a crossing, and it looks like we're coming into Corydon Junction, and we're going to talk to the station master there. So until that time, why, hang on. And that's the sound from the other end of the short line, the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon, ladies and gentlemen. We have now traversed the entire 8 miles of this railroad, and we are at the end of the line. We're in Corydon Junction, and we're in the station agent's office. And the station agent is Mr. Harold Vaught. Mr. Vaught, we're located about 10 feet from a pretty impressive-looking railroad track out there. What railroad is that?
Well, that is the main line of the Southern Railway.
And between the 2 points is that track running?
Well, directly from East St. Louis, Illinois, to Louisville on this division.
All right, sir. Now, what happens to the freight cars that we've had? There goes, what was that went by?
Well, that was a motor car. Some of the maintenance away men or signal department I think that was the signalman in that case.
Oh, that was that rush of noise you heard just a little while ago. And, Mr. Vaught, what happens is I started to ask you to the freight cars that come here from Corydon. Once they are brought in to this place, what happens to them?
Well, in the case of these cars, they're separated and set out on the pickup track according to the direction in which they are routed to be picked up by one of our through trains, either westbound or eastbound, as the case may be, and taken to destination on our line or to the connection, some other railroad at some point, as the routing may call for. For instance, CNEI, Princeton, Indiana, and they're on to Chicago, or well, there's just a lot of ways as far as routing.
And we're going to take a few cars back, I imagine, to the city of Corydon. And how do we know which cars to take back now?
Well, these cars you see out here on the pickup track are some of these are destined Corydon, as they've been set out here by our through trains, along with their waybill giving the information as a consignee and contents, and of course location of consignee. Well, I sort these cars, make a lineup for the LNA&C Railroad to pick from the group out there the cars that they take back to the city of Corydon.
And they are the ones that we will take back in just a few minutes. Is that right?
That is right. I'm afraid it'll be several minutes, though, for there's a couple of large trains due in the next 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Well, then, in that time, I've got an idea of what we're going to do. As a matter of fact, thank you very much, Mr. Harold Vaught, station agent here in Corydon Junction, for telling us what happens at this end of the line. Just 8 miles from the beginning of the line, as a matter of fact. And so during that time, while we're waiting for these two through trains, what do you say we hop across the street? There's a general store over there, and I got a feeling these people have been around Corydon a long time, or rather Corydon Junction, and they've seen quite a bit of the history of the LNA&C Short Line Railroad. And so let's hop over there. All right, it was a very short hop between the Corydon Junction station and the general store right across the street. We have our recording equipment set up in the Hendricks General Store, and it is owned, and the proprietors are Mr. and Mrs. J.L. Montgomery. We're very fortunate in having Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery right with us here in the store. And although this store is located in New Salisbury, Indiana, as a matter of fact, the shipping point is Corydon Junction, so you might say that right across the street is a different place entirely. Anyway, Mrs. Montgomery, how far back can you remember the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon Railroad?
About 40 years.
And have things changed at all with regard to the way it looks and the way it runs and so forth in that time?
Well, yes. Years back, they had one passenger coach to begin with. Then later on, they had the passenger coach and the caboose combined. Now they consist mostly of freight.
It also had a steam locomotive on those days,
yes,
did it not?
And now it has the diesel engine.
Oh yes. Well, how did they handle the passenger traffic that they had? Where did they load and unload and all that sort of thing?
Well, right here at our depot, they would load, and then some of the other trains would bring in the passengers, you see, from other points. And then they had this passenger coach, which they would take passengers on.
You were talking about this coach that was half express compartment and half passenger compartment. It looked like a caboose. Have you ever ridden in that one?
Yes, I have.
And we had a little dramatic bit at the beginning of this program depicting a person getting on that coach, and now we have a person who's actually ridden on it right here with us. How did the coach ride, Mrs. Montgomery?
Well, it was it rode fairly well. Only thing it had sort of a rocking motion to it.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I think we did compare it to Uncle Harold's little rocking chair, as a matter of fact. Well, nowadays, you say that certain improvements happened on the line. Is that right?
Oh, yes. They have the line in better condition now as they work on this line and keep it up. And then they have the diesel engine.
All of which goes to make a smoother ride, although even though they are not handling passengers. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And there it goes. You can tell that we're pretty close to a track. We're right across the street from the Southern Railroad there, and that was the tremendous air horns of one of the diesel freights that is going by. Mrs. Montgomery, now, has there ever been a time when, that you know of, that the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon has stopped running in your lifetime?
No, sir. They kept their freight line up during all the years.
Well, that's
regularly.
That's a very wonderful tribute to the people who are heading up that particular organization. Even though the short line has decreased somewhat in the United States, the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon is still going strong. Say, how long has this store been in your family, Mrs. Montgomery?
About 43 years.
And would you say, where is it located with regard to the Corydon Junction Depot there?
I would say it'd be south, about 25 feet.
Oh, yeah, well, 25 feet from the yards over there, and that's right across the street here. Well, Mrs. Montgomery, we certainly thank you for taking time out. You have a busy clientele in here, and for taking time out and talking to us and kind of reminiscing a bit about the railroad. And now we will return to Corydon and talk to one of the executives back there. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude today's program, instead of our regular practice of presenting an executive of the industry involved in these transportation series, we thought to reflect the importance of a short line railroad, we'd present a representative of one of the industries serviced by it. So, right now, it's a privilege to present the plant expediter, Keller Manufacturing Company, Corydon, Indiana, Mr. John Keller.
As a representative of the Keller Manufacturing Company of Corydon, Indiana, who are manufacturers of fine dinette tables, chairs, and solid maple bedroom furniture, I can say that our sales go into every state in the continental United States, Canada, and Mexico. As a manufacturer, our lumber supplies are purchased from 4 points in Massachusetts and as far west as California and Oregon, and also from Woodstock, Ontario, Canada, besides the countless other items necessary for a finished product. Our furniture plant is located here near the center of the United States, and our product is designed for the wide range of middle-income families who furnish their homes in good taste. Naturally, this type of furniture is in demand all over the country. Railroad transportation is our most used method of fulfilling this demand, and our local railroad serves us very capably. Mr. Charles A. Keller, our president, has always been a staunch supporter of local short-line railroads. In fact, we are stockholders of the railroad company, and it is to our advantage to cooperate 100% with them. And I might add that it is mutual on our part that we do get the cooperation. Mr. Keller demands that all shipments be handled by the Louisville, New Albany, and Corydon Railroad Company, or their truck line, and he fully realizes that to continue rail service, there must be complete cooperation to help each keep a healthy financial statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Keller, plant expediter, Keller Manufacturing Company. And that, friends, brings to a close this edition of Transportation Indiana Today, featuring a short line railroad.
Transportation Indiana is produced by Elmer G. Sullivan, written and directed by Jack Shield. Audio technician was Norm Hostler. Transportation Indiana is a presentation of the Indiana University Radio and Television Service.